Hello everyone. So today I am reviewing this month's Humble Monthly Bundle, saying that is really hard, or at least so much of it as we do actually have. I always buy these and doing reviews is a lot of fun for me, so I figured I would go ahead and play them and let you guys know what I think. As before, I do not rate games on a 1 to 10 scale or anything, I just say whether I recommend it or not. This month's bundle is Surviving Mars and Kingdom Come Deliverance. I did not own either of these games, so this is a fresh experience for me. I will be reviewing Surviving Mars first, and then leave a timestamp below to skip to Kingdom Come if you would like to. With that said, Surviving Mars. First things first, this game really defies genres. A lot of people said it was a city builder, but it's actually a lot more than that. It's a true colony simulation with a great deal of depth. It has a technology tree, individual rover units you can command, survival elements, and a great deal of exploration. Before I go any further, I should mention that the game has several modes: a tutorial, the main game, a challenge mode where you can meet certain goals within time limits, and a creative mode that is less about survival and more about just enjoying the building process. I played the main game, though I really need to warn you, the game seems very complex on the surface, but has an amazing tutorial. If you get this game, play the tutorial. It is a lifesaver, and seems to have been actually designed by people who really know how to teach others. Moving on, one of the cooler things they've done is that they have a nearly complete map of Mars, and you can land anywhere on that map. It seems the polar regions are the only regions not really included. There are preset landing sites to found your colony, but technically, you can choose anywhere as a landing site. When you select each landing site, it will show you what kind of resources and natural disasters and weather you will have to contend with, which is pretty cool. Once you've landed, the first stage of play is all about commanding automated drones and building the infrastructure you need to support actual human colonists while you explore the areas around your landing site. This includes checking out any anomalies you find. The play area is on a sort of grid, and you can slowly scan that grid and open up new areas to expand into as you play. Something I greatly appreciate is that pretty much everything I've seen here is scientifically accurate, or at least plausible. Our orbiting Mars probes have found evidence of significant amount of water below the Martian surface, and we know that the polar caps have a great deal of water in them too. I bring this up because not only do your colonists need water, but you actually extract water to fuel your rockets, which blew my mind. We do exactly this thing to fuel rockets in the real world. Water is hydrogen and oxygen. Separate them out and you can make liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. Rocket fuel. Anyways, I actually had a lot more here about the science, as I'm an astronomy and space exploration nerd, but I'll move on. The point is, I love how practical everything feels. Beyond the obvious, such as resource gathering and providing life support for colonists, you can also assign different jobs to different buildings, allowing you to specialize different domes. In fact, you can even filter passenger rockets from Earth so that they only bring the kind of colonists that you need the most. All of the buildings have different jobs available for the colonists, and they all have different benefits, such as a grocer distributing food or a research lab accelerating research. There's even entertainment in factory buildings. Another interesting detail is the mystery you can choose when setting up the game. They range in difficulty, and they determine an ongoing storyline that unfolds as you play. This can range anywhere from a mysterious alien presence to the Earth being embroiled in a horrifying war. I had to choose the inner light. How could I not when they're quoting Picard? There's not much else to cover. The animations and the art in the game are beautiful, and the music is so gorgeous. You've been listening to it throughout the review, and it is so good. Absolutely sublime. I have had so many moments while playing this where I just had to stop and just be like, wow, this is so good. I really only have a couple issues. First is that I wish there was an auto pause feature that I could set up to pause the game when certain kinds of alerts were given to me. Another is that there is no quick save function that I could find, requiring me to manually save quite frequently. I guess those are pretty small gripes though. A final note is that it uses the Paradox DLC model. It is a Paradox game after all. It's very distinctive. Basically, they just keep adding more and more features to the game as DLC as they go. Several of their games have ended up with like dozens of DLCs with huge cumulative price ranges in like the hundreds of dollars. I suppose the question is, does it hurt the game? I don't think so. It doesn't at all feel like they chopped the game into pieces so they could sell you the rest later. The base game that comes with the Humble Bundle is an extremely complete game. I recommend only buying the DLC you think you might actually like, or, you know, none at all, since the game is amazing without them. So, all that said, is the game worth it? Yes. So yes. I was not sure I'd be able to get into this game because it seemed so complex, but with the amazing tutorial, the ethereal soundtrack, and the absolutely engaging gameplay, I pretty much couldn't put it down. I played this all night long. It has that Civilization style one more turn effect even though it doesn't have turns. A highly recommended game. Next up is Kingdom Come Deliverance. Alright, so this is a historical fantasy role-playing game that takes place in medieval Europe in the early 1400s. It is an open-world RPG with a lot of what you'd expect from such a thing, including dialogue choices, romance options, moral decisions, and some pretty interesting side quests. However, I'm going to go over what I didn't like first, and that's because what I didn't like were the things that were most immediately noticeable and glaring. Put simply, this game is deeply, deeply flawed. For one thing, the facial animations are absolutely atrocious. There is no expression of emotion on the characters' faces, and the lip animations are terrible. In fact, the lip syncing is often way off, and sometimes the lips don't even move at all.
You don't look like you know a thing about ghosts. Why didn't she come herself? Why did she send someone so young instead? Do you know anything at all about exorcism?
And then one of the things that irked me the most is that saving is limited. And not just a little limited, extremely limited. You need an item to save. This is obnoxious and bad for many reasons. One of the most important, of course, is that if saving is very limited and you have to almost entirely rely on autosaves or getting to a bed to sleep save, you basically have to plan your life around the game. That's never good. That's not even to mention what happens if you crash, which happened to me, or if you lose power in a brownout or something, which also happened to me. One time I got stuck in a geometry and had to reload and lost 20 minutes of play. Thankfully, there is a mod on the Nexus to turn that off, which I'm going to link below. Oh yeah, and then to add insult to injury, you are limited in the number of save slots the game will store for you, regardless of how beefy your hard drive is. 10 saves. That's it. After that, you have to start overwriting. There is also a mod that fixes that, which I am also linking below. The entire save system is just bad, and I have no idea why they thought any of it was a good idea. And of course, there was one more thing that made me want to quit right away, and that is that the game is first person only, which is awful as I get motion sick in some first person games, especially ones with noticeable head bob like this one. I was pretty much ready to throw up for the first 4 or 5 hours of this game before I adjusted to it. That is simply not okay. My last major complaint is the combat, which is clunky, floaty, unresponsive, and just plain badly designed. Once they actually teach you about combat, you realize it's really quite deep and is trying to simulate the logic behind actual sword fighting, whereby you must attack at different angles versus where the enemy is guarding with their weapon to get past defenses. That said, the system could be a lot better, and I don't feel that the mouse and keyboard controls are at all intuitive. You control the direction you are attacking from by moving your mouse in that direction, which just feels like the opposite of how it should work. To attack from the left, I have to move my mouse left, even though my brain tells me that I should be swinging the mouse right to attack from the left. It's backwards. On top of that, I kept trying to use my movement keys to control this stuff because that's the way my brain seems to think it should work. Also, once in combat, you are locked onto an opponent in front of you automatically, which makes it very hard to switch targets in a fight with multiple enemies. Overall, I think the combat system was a really good idea, with probably the worst execution I could imagine. It is atrocious. I feel like for the system to accomplish what they wanted, you would need to play it with 3 arms, and I am just not that kind of mutant. It may not be much of an issue depending on how you play through, though. This game is heavily roleplay and dialogue based, and the game really encourages you to avoid fighting most of the time. And frankly, this game shines in the interaction with the world and the people in it. On that note, we'll move on to the positives. Well, on the other hand, the rest of it is fantastic. It's based on actual historical events, though it does take some liberties. Regardless, the world it takes place in has a deeply authentic feel to it. It's very tangible. It feels like much more of a real place than the more fantastical settings that we usually see in games of this kind. Alchemy is a thing, and magic is not. People certainly believe in magic since they believe in God and the devil and such things like that, but it's superstition. Even alchemy isn't that over the top, and most of it seems at least plausible. It feels real because it should. It's a piece of our own past. The game takes place in an area of Bohemia in the Holy Roman Empire, in what is today the Czech Republic. Even the towns, while still probably not sized quite realistically, are much larger than the little tiny cities in games like Skyrim. The Witcher had a much better sense of scale, and I would say that Kingdom Come is probably between those two, leaning more towards the Witcher scales. Something I found amusing was that clothing and armor stores didn't have shoes like in every other fantasy game. I was like, wait, did they actually include a cobbler? And sure enough, they did. For those who don't know, a cobbler is the crafter and artisan who makes the shoes and boots and such. I even noticed they kept the tanneries outside the cities because they stink horribly. Moving on from the world, the main character you play is a likable kid, though he sometimes does stupid stuff without giving you control over it. There are a lot of dialogue options in the game, but it's not as freeform as something like The Witcher or Mass Effect where you're given a choice at nearly every decision. Sometimes this kid is just going to act on his own and do something dumb, like start a fight with a nobleman. I'm alright with that though. He's a kid from a backcountry town that is thrown into a bunch of intrigue and politics that's way over his head. It takes him time to learn how to navigate his way around people of higher station. In fact, I love that this game doesn't treat the player like a superhero. He is not some immortal legendary hero that can't be fought even at higher levels. I always like to comment on the music of a game because the music is very important to me. It can really make or break an experience. The music in this game is hit or miss. Sometimes it's amazing and really swept me off my feet, particularly in the opening scene, but at other times it's really quite forgettable. Overall, the quality is pretty high though, and it's clearly well produced. What I found interesting was that this game really made use of quiet moments where it wasn't afraid to just turn the music off and let the world and the people speak for themselves. Alright, so one last thing I want to mention requires some minor spoilers, as it is fairly early in the game and is literally line 1 of the game's description on Steam. I'll put a spoiler tag on the screen and take it down when I'm done talking about this, and put a timestamp down below. When you start the game, you are just some normal kid with a nice mom and a nice dad in a small town. You have a girlfriend, a group of close friends, and a life. You actually spend quite a long time here before it all goes to hell, and the village is destroyed, and your parents and your girlfriend are killed. Wouldn't it be nice to have a game where that didn't have to happen? The thing is, this game succeeds where many others have failed. Only Dragon Age Origins did this right out of the games that I have played. All of my interactions with my character's parents, friends, girlfriend, they endeared me to these characters. The time in the village was a good time, and it was filled with moments that made me care about these people. That's a good thing. Too often do games kill your loved ones off 5 seconds after you start the game, or worse yet, just hand you a tragic backstory and expect you to care. This game, instead, gives you time to bond with these people, and it made Henry's need to go do right by them my need to go do right by them. My only real problem is that I didn't get enough time to bond with the mother character, as most of the focus was on the father, but she was still really cool. Either way, I think I said enough. Mechanically, the game is deeply flawed, but for me, makes up for it in its world and its heart. It has very personal and emotional storytelling, and that is what ultimately hooked me. All the stakes feel so big and so personal that I couldn't put it down, despite its flaws. I'll give it a stamp of cautiously recommended. I really enjoyed this game a great deal and plan to keep playing it, but it has some really glaring issues. Overall, I would say that this month's bundle is a really high value and is totally worth it, and that is before whatever else is in there is revealed. Both of these games on offer have a lot going for them, though I think Surviving Mars is by far more mechanically sound and probably has more staying power. Honestly, buying the bundle for Surviving Mars alone is worth it. You can just take Kingdom Come as a bonus at that point. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, everyone. Take care.